One could rightly say that there are many storms brewing on the horizon. There always are, and the vast majority of them are not predictable. In most cases, we just don't know when a storm hits. It's unknown, and that's been the case for most of humanity. You'd think it also would apply to the modern era, the current era, where we have this allegedly greater understanding of the world. We understand how things work, we can make better predictions, and yet these things never turn out the way we think they will. I'm hardly an economist, but I'm told that no one has ever successfully, at least consistently, predicted economic turmoil in great detail. They've made vague proclamations, vague predictions, and some of these predictions might, again, vaguely map onto what actually happens, but nobody really knows exactly what has happened. It's always this kind of hindsight 2020, this happened and that happened, and this is why we got this. And despite that, there are still constant prognostications about, say, the dollar crashing or the end of the economy as we know it. Again, I'm not an economist, I don't have economic expertise, but I tend not to put too much stock into statements like that. With that said, everything I'm about to talk about today is just my feeling, my sense of what's going to happen. I'm not claiming this will happen, but there are two elements that are slowly but surely moving in a certain direction, fusing together, that are quite alarming, creating a perfect storm of sorts. The first element is the element of automation and AI. A lot of people have been sounding the alarm bells on this, and there seems to be a great deal of division on the ultimate impact of automation and AI. Some people take it very seriously. I have talked to people directly involved in the creation and the maintenance of AI technology who quite literally, this is not an exaggeration, think that we have little more than a decade or so before the machines take over, so to speak. And on the other side of the argument, I've talked to people who are also deeply involved in AI, that is, on a visceral level, which is to say they work with it directly, who are much more sanguine, who think either this is a threat in terms of decades, or it's just something we shouldn't be worrying about, with every iteration in between. And so everything I'm about to talk about here should be taken with a grain of salt. I do not have expertise in any of this, but I tend to fall in the middle, I would say, on this AI automation argument or view of the world, having listened to people with purported expertise on the subject. So there is certainly an issue, it seems, when it comes to AI and its potential to rob people of jobs and employment. Case in point, most recently, the CEO of EA, Andrew Wilson, a corpo, if there's ever been a corpo, was absolutely giddy about the planned execution and implementation of AI to EA's gaming projects, which in shorthand means that the people who normally do certain things involving graphics and visuals could very well be replaced to varying degrees, although nominally they might argue that, they're just going to be made more efficient. But we all have a sense of what that could mean. So probably, slowly but surely, many types of jobs will be either made completely redundant or at least partially, and a lot of people will be losing work. To what degree this might be, we just don't know. And in contrast to what a lot of people think, again, this is just my opinion, my view, I don't think this is yet another instance of, back then when the horses and the oxen were replaced by tractors, the farmers eventually got used to the tractors and found new work and made it more efficient. I think there's definitely some aspect of this where artists will work directly with AI to enhance their work, as an example, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be a one-to-one. Everyone's just going to get along swimmingly once the AI revolution starts, because they'll get used to it or they'll find something new. And we also don't know, because everything's so unpredictable, what types of jobs exactly will be replaced. It just seems that when you look at the chopping block, it's probably things related to visual art, graphics, and cinematics more broadly. But even as we speak, AI, I'm told, can write better code than most human beings, and these are people that actually specialize in writing code, I've been told. Again, no expertise here, just telling you what people have told me who actually work in these fields. So there's a potential risk of mass unemployment that has been caused and accelerated by the propagation of AI technology. Okay, that sounds fine. What is the other element of this perfect storm, though, you might ask? Well, in case you haven't noticed, or you do not live either in Western Europe or North America, you're probably aware of a serious issue related to mass migration, mass immigration, primarily coming from the third world, as a result, in the context of the United States, of an open southern border, and in Europe as a result of NGOs and lax governments who just don't care and presumably have certain agendas. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road, because there are all sorts of issues when it comes to mass immigration coming from the third world, people who are undereducated, come from vastly different cultures, backgrounds, and their integration into societies that are wholly different from theirs. That in itself is a can of worms I'm not going to open here, but it is a thing, absolutely, and it shouldn't be ignored. But when you think about the robustness of the economy and the worries people have in general about unemployment, and then you take into account the looming threat, if indeed it is a threat, of AI, replacing jobs and making people redundant, that is the perfect storm to me. This melange of, on the one hand, lots of old jobs disappearing because the AI overlords take over, possibly. And on the other hand, people who, regardless, were not going to be economically productive in any event, which is to say they're a net burden on the system, etc., etc. There have actually been studies done in a few European countries that have served to counter the claim that all migration serves as a net economic benefit. Indeed, it's been determined in a place such as Denmark that over time, migrants, people coming from the third world, do not actually pay in more net than they take out of the welfare system, of the social system, etc., etc. So you have these people that are not economically beneficial, by and large. And then you have, you could say, native populations, people that are from the country, who are being made redundant, losing their jobs, or at the very least, losing employment opportunities on a large scale, potentially, who will invariably have to turn to the state for some kind of relief, right? Be it in the form of welfare or the much vaunted UBI. I've made some comments in the past in videos about UBI. I don't know what to think. I'm increasingly reluctant with increasing age to make positive assertions about things I just don't know enough about. I think we would all be better off if we didn't do that. But regardless, it seems that in this potential scenario of the perfect storm I am illustrating, that UBI might be an inevitability. And then specifically you have this problem in this context of these people who have recently emigrated, who are not equipped to work, who are not equipped to really do very much of anything economically, and people have been there for a long time, who have been working and have been displaced due to the so-called AI revolution. And then what? You see, historically, when you look at how things go down, how things shake out, the economy always seems to be really important. I'm fairly confident in saying, just as an example, that Mustache Man, the guy everyone likes to talk about, probably would not have come to power were it not for the economic destitution of Germany at that time. And there's a long series of causal chains that lead up to that, of course, possibly the biggest one being the impact of the Treaty of Versailles and the reparations that Germany had to pay. Of course, there are others as well, but I merely cite this as an example of what happens when the economy gets really bad. There's an ensuing economic competition between various members of the populace, and yeah, that's when the fecal matter tends to hit the fan. And it seems that, at least in my view, again, I'm just hypothesizing here, that this bus is potentially driving itself off the cliff if you end up with this synthesis of mass unemployment caused by AI, the AI revolution, with respect to long-term residents or native populations, versus newly arrived migrants, immigrants who have very little to contribute economically, who are in many cases probably even just seeking benefits more than anything else. And what that could ultimately lead to, which I think, if you try to paint a picture in your head, is nothing pretty at all. The results for all participants could be potentially horrific beyond all measure. And so whilst we cannot perfectly predict most things, and we cannot know exactly what's going to happen, it seems that we should at least have some inkling as to what might happen, and so as to not add more kindling to the fire with the current migration crisis in both North America and in Western Europe, maybe limit the mass migration that's currently occurring, just as a suggestion, a thought, so as to not amplify the potential risk that is already present as a result of the things that I have discussed thus far. But no, rather than that, the ruling class seems, as always, perfectly content to run the bus off a cliff. After all, they're not the ones who are going to be affected, so why should they care? And so all we can do is wait, twiddle our thumbs, and sit in our seats as we are hit, not by the apocalypse, but by an apocalypse, which will be very, very painful and unpleasant indeed, the dimensions of which we can only imagine, but I'm sure your imaginations are quite potent and you can imagine many possible things. Anyway, as always, thank you for tuning in. Many special thanks to my patrons on Patreon and my donors on PayPal. You guys are simply integral to the channel. Without you, the channel could not exist. In the wake of the onslaught that YouTube exercises upon my channel, many special thanks again, gentlemen. You guys are the best. As for everybody else, if you can leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, presumably it helps. I have no idea. It'd be much appreciated. If I'm still alive, I'll check you out next time. Until then, may the gods watch over you. Bye-bye for now. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.